Stitch People. Welcome to the Stitch People podcast. I'm Lizzie Bean, your host and the founder of Stitch People, where our goal with cross-stitching is to inspire your personal creativity, and our goal with the podcast is to help you make some new friends while you're at it. I just had the most wonderful conversation with Giselle Navarro. She's one of our Stitch People ambassadors, which has been so fun to explore this year, and she's an excellent cross-stitcher, and she has such great advice. This episode is going to be so inspiring for everyone, but especially for anyone who's considered selling their portraits or starting their own shop, even if it's not cross-stitching, if you're just thinking of selling your art or any other crafts that you make. This is such a great episode for anyone thinking of putting some value, a monetary value to their skills, which is a very scary and vulnerable thing. Giselle and I dive right into it, and she has such good advice for staying motivated, for figuring out kind of your boundaries around the thing and determining your own value and holding on to that in this crazy e-commerce internet freelance world. So buckle up, pull up some stitching, get a snack, and enjoy this conversation with Giselle. You're going to absolutely love it and absolutely enjoy kind of making a friend in her with her great advice. Can't wait for you to connect. So enjoy. Before we launch into this episode, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. We had a little bit of some technical difficulties with this interview. I think you'll still be able to get the gist of it, especially with the context, but just a heads up, the audio is not the best, and we did our best to make it sound as good as possible. So sorry for that, but I still hope you enjoy this interview. Giselle, welcome to the Stitch People podcast. Thank you so much for joining today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to chat with you because you are one of our Stitch People ambassadors, which is, a new thing that we started at the beginning of this year, just trying to get some more faces out there as, official Stitch People affiliated folks. And we had you on the radar for a long time and really love what you do. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's excited to get to know you. So it's gonna be fun. Giselle, tell us a little bit about where you're from.
So I am from Rialto, California. It is the tiny little town in the middle of the IE, the Inland Empire, and I've been here my entire life. It's so simple.
Awesome. Where is the Inland Empire?
So
for those who may not know,
we're about 60 miles inward from Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So that San Bernardino area.
East.
Mm-hmm, east. San Bernardino area. I'm
cool.
Terrible with north, south, east, west. I'm over at the McDonald's to your right.
That way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
Yes, I'm to your right, right? I point to my left as I say to my right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's me.
That's great. So born and raised in the Inland Empire. Very cool. So nice and warm where you are.
Yes, for now. I think Friday I'm supposed to get snow for a day.
Okay. So you're in the part of California that sometimes can go either way. That's pretty fun.
It's just one day cool. A year. It doesn't even last.
Okay, fair. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you and, what your family is like and what your days look like.
So I am a pediatric occupational therapist. I have been one for over a decade now. So that I work part-time at a outpatient clinic who services children 0 to 21, and we mostly see cerebral palsy and neuromuscular impairments and diagnoses like that. So my day starts out with helping to get breakfast and the children ready for school, and then my husband, who is a high school art teacher,
Cool.
He will do all the drop-off stuff for us, and then I go to work. I see my kiddos. I have a grand old time. I get off work. I go get my kiddos. I come home. It's the homework routine. It's music lessons. It's getting them ready for sports. And then my husband comes home and he takes the kids to the sports, or I take the kids to the sports, and we swap out. It's just this rotation of duties until they go to bed. And then I can do stitching stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. So both you and your husband work with kids.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And how many kids do you have?
I have two. I have Alice and I have Bear. Alice is...
Alice and Bear, just like your Instagram name.
Yes. So Alice will be 11 this year, and Bear is going to be 7. So his name is Vincent, but we call him Bear because he is all things bear. Um, for as far as I can remember, his favorite foods have been berries. He climbs all kinds of things. He will climb me. He likes to be like this heavy, playful. Those videos of those pandas when they're playing, that's my son.
Just rolling
Just rolling
around
around,
and
just getting dirty,
doing it
having
all.
fun, just being happy and silly. And that is my
Yeah.
son. So he's Bear. And Alice is actually Alicia, but Alicia is Spanish for Alice.
Well, there you go. How fun. So tell us a little bit about how we've had this theme this season. I don't know why, but I feel like everybody has these really cute stories of how they met their spouse. How did you meet your spouse?
In middle school.
See, that's the theme. It's like these fated, wonderful meetings. So you've known your husband since middle school. Yes. Were you friends?
Yes, we were friends in middle school. We dated. I think we went to a movie.
Of course, dating in middle school.
We went to a movie like once or twice. And then I transferred schools. So we lost touch for a little while. But then by chance, he had made a comment to a mutual friend that he had thought he saw me at a park. And the friend, saying that I was married, I had kids. And she's like, no, she doesn't. And he's like, what do you mean? You still talk to her? And she's like, yeah, look. And he's like, oh my gosh, like, I have to say hi to her. Like, what are the odds that this story happened? And so he reached out and we started talking again. We hung out for a while. And then, I don't know, maybe 6 months after we had started hanging out with one another, we decided to be official. We dated for a couple, I'd say 8 months when he proposed. And then we got married like a year later.
Magic.
It was magic. It was fun. And it was one of those things where we didn't miss a beat. It was wonderful. Like, I don't know. I can't explain why, but now here we are going on our 15th year married, and it feels like we just got married. So,
wow. Yeah. That's great. I'm so glad I asked. Whoever started this trend, I can't remember who the first interview was, but somebody started. Maybe it was Parrish. And her cute, like she and her husband, neither of them were from Hawaii, and they met in Hawaii and randomly. And it was like, oh my gosh. So I've started asking. Everybody's stories are so great. Middle school sweethearts. Yeah. That is epic. That is so great.
It's so funny.
How wonderful. And now you have an 11-year-old, you have a 7-year-old, and life's a happy place.
I have a picture from that time. I'll probably post it at some point. It's awfully hilarious. It's all of the bad things and all the good things in one photo.
Kids these days, I'm old enough to say, kids these days don't know, like, they say social media is having I'm sure it is true, the mental health impact on like teenagers and stuff. But when you have access to like an internet world of information as a teenager, it's really easy to Google things like how to do your makeup or like how to do your hair. Like I didn't legitimately know how to deal with my hair till like 4 years ago. And so, the millennials and the elder millennials and the Gen Xers, like the unfortunate nature of our middle school experience cannot be overstated. And I just feel like middle schoolers today just aren't as awkward as we were. I don't know. So that's a photo I'm excited to see, is I guess what I'm getting at.
It's glorious. It's one of those pictures that comes out just for the sake of having a good laugh.
Oh, yes. Every time. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so your husband's an art teacher, and you are an occupational therapist by day, stitcher by night. So it sounds like your home is a very artful and creative place to be.
Absolutely. I think
that's pretty darn
since
cool.
My daughter was curious enough to color, we threw down paper on the floor, spread out crayons, and let her be. We tried doing that with my son, but he would eat them. Wasn't for him, but definitely a house full of creativity here. If it's not music, then it's definitely through the arts. With both of us being very grounded in development and education and just learning through experience and how important it is to use your hands and your mind to create, and just the growth that you get in all areas, math and sciences, simply by doing something creative like that. I think my husband and I both know from the start that that's an important thing with raising our kids. So, our daughter's won art contest already. I know, right? She participated in the city's art district, water district competition, and throughout the schools, 200 applications, 12 got chosen to be a part of the calendar for the year, and she was one of the 12. So we were so excited for her.
What?
She's won.
That's excellent.
I know she's won creativity creative writing awards, where like an acting troupe was supposed to act out her story, which was a really cute story about a mosquito. But unfortunately, COVID happened, so the troupe didn't get to do it. But it was still a really cute story, and we were very proud of her.
Oh. And she was chosen, which is, that's quite an honor. How neat. So it's something that comes naturally to you and your husband, and something that you've made an effort to foster in your children as well.
It seems to come really naturally to them too. So it's like we just keep honing it in. Like you just keep doing it. And I think them seeing us do other artistic things encourages them a lot also, like music-wise. My son is the piano and his ability to like 3D design. So he's been really good with like Legos at an early age, like piecing them together and creating things. So I know that 3D design in him is there, and my husband's excited to like foster it with like designing 3D printing stuff with him, because we have access to that too. So it's cool. It's exciting to see what the kids do, and hopefully that this helps them, in their schooling too. So I don't know. We're like a science experiment.
I love the again, just the kids that these days that have access to the internet. Like I remember taking a technology class in 6th grade, and like 6th grade was part of middle school for me. So it was one of my periods, and we had this technology class, and we learned, that's where we built like bridges made of wood, and we pressure tested them, and like, I think those kinds of activities. But we did do a little segment on learning AutoCAD, which I don't know now anymore, but it's 3D object imaging. It's like the program that like engineers use to design engine pieces, and they make sure they fit together, and then it creates blueprints of these things. But like for kids to be able to just like Google stuff and watch YouTube videos, and I just remember how that lit up my brain. It was so cool to use the computer for like real world stuff, back in 2000 period, just the year 2098, these earlier internet times. But it's so cool. Like you said, the 3D printing, man, if I'd had that as a kid, who knows what I could have done. Man, that's so neat. And I'm sure with your husband's access at school, what the school has, how neat. Are your kids going to go through school with him? Is he in the same district? Yeah. Oh, how fun.
So my daughter looks forward to that. She's like, can't wait to have dance class, and I'm going to, be his assistant. I'm like, oh my gosh, child, we'll see. We'll see how teenage you feels about that.
Right. Yeah. Teenage you might feel different.
Maybe, but you keep doing that. You keep thinking that's going to be the case. That would be awesome. I mean, she knows a lot of the stuff that she does. Like she does animations with her dad here with her iPad, and she puts together movies on like the apps on the iPad, and they're
cool.
They're really good. She's helped me with some real stuff.
Fun.
Because like their exposure to it is on a constant. I don't know. She's good
totally
with what she does, and so like them two together, they do a lot of. He does like if he's going to teach a new lesson on something, he does it with her as a test run to see how it's going to work out, and she gives him feedback like, oh, like I liked this, or I didn't like that, or he himself is like, it's not going to work, or that was too easy, or he'll tell his students like, look, my 10-year-old can do it. There's no excuse for you.
Haha. Yeah. little competition there.
So yeah,
that is so cool, so fun. And so your son plays piano. Mm-hmm. Does your daughter play any instruments, and do you and your husband play instruments?
So my husband is self-taught guitar and self-taught piano.
Cool.
My son is playing piano, and we were going to force him to do violin in the summer because he initially wanted to do violin, but I didn't let him. I needed him to work on his fine motor skills. Sorry.
Fair.
He needed some work with his fingers, and I was like, maybe we should start you with piano first. So he's been doing that. This will be his second year. And then Alice plays piano and violin and guitar.
Oh, my gosh.
That is her.
Oh
that is her.
my
That's not
gosh.
me forcing her.
You're
I
like
feel like it's
2023 Osmond family dreams come true.
I feel like it's like we forced her, but honestly, she's gravitated towards those things. Like she just, it's
Cool.
in her. And there's those things where you just want to keep it going. Like what's your thing? What makes you tick? What makes you excited about something? And hopefully we can foster that because, we have the ability to nowadays. Like we have access to things that perhaps our parents didn't when we were younger, so we missed out on that. Like, I wanted to play violin. I actually made that choice for Alice when she was 7 to try the violin as her first instrument. And she may have resented me then, but she likes it now. She likes it now.
That's good.
She was good with guitar. So we were like, okay, well, you already know strings. Let's try. And that guitar thing came with her dad. So we were like, well, let's try the violin. So when she started learning the violin, and then we did brother with piano. And she's like, but I want to learn piano too. And we're like, can you handle 2 instruments? Like the guitar was just by chance, but with your dad, kind of like a here and there kind of thing. But the piano and the violin, are you going to fuss with me when it comes to doing practices? Are you going to fuss with me when it comes to going to practices? And what's your game here, kid? And she's like, I really want to learn. So we got her on board with the same instructor that my son has, and it's actually virtual. So the instructor's in the Philippines, and she calls in on Facebook Messenger, and the kids do it virtually, and I'm there with them to assist if necessary. Try to guide them through stuff or focus, redirect. And then I write out what their assignment is for the week, and in order for them to have access to technology like TV, iPads, video games, they have to finish their homework, and part of their homework is do a practice lesson of the assignment that they're supposed to do.
I love that. Those old school rules. That's how it was in my household too. No TV until 20 minutes of practice and homework.
Right. And so it comes to her so naturally. Like I think my husband was learning to play Canon D, and he's trying, he's learning and he's learning and he's learning. And then one day she comes over, she's like, what are you doing, Dad? And he's like, oh, I'm trying to learn this song. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. Can I try? And he's like, yeah, sure. So she came, she sat down, she played it effortlessly. My husband's like,
that's so great.
He's like,
kid brains, man.
Like, I've been trying for a while, and she just pulled that out like she could practice again. And I was like, she's good.
Man, that's so great. So what do you think? I mean, because you work with kids in the occupational therapy setting, which, like you said, this is kids who have conditions sometimes or injuries. I'm sure sometimes, sports injury or they broke an arm and need to relearn how to use their hand. Like, I'm sure that's a very frustrating thing for a lot of kids who had mobility and now it's limited and need to relearn, or who don't have mobility and it hurts or is hard to learn. That I'm sure is of a similar nature, kids protesting, practicing an instrument or things like that. So what would you say are like tactics or tips that you find to, like you said, it's that fine balance of, okay, you have to do your practice before you can have screen time or whatever, but also you want to keep that spark alive. You want them to want it. And so, how do you balance that?
I think it comes down to one, know the kid. So obviously some kids can tolerate longer periods of focus than other kids. So if you know that one kid is going to tolerate 10 minutes of practice straight versus, you need to get in 30 minutes of a lesson, but they really lose it after those 5 or 10 minutes, then there's no rule that says you have to do the 30 in those 30 minutes. Like spread it out, make them practice the song, 3 times, but 1 time in order to have access to TV. Okay, fine. 1 time before we're about to head out to their friend's house. 1 time before you're going to get to play that video game you were waiting to play. Like there's your 3 times. So it's a matter of 1, knowing the kid, 2, knowing their limitations as far as what their ability to focus. And then like it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. So like with their piano instructor, she lets them pick songs that excite them.
Oh, cool.
That excites them. Yes. So it's not even just here's the book and we're going on page 19 and tomorrow, next week is page 20. Like yes, that's a part of the lesson and it's briefly touched upon, but then again, that's kind of my job during the week of like the warm up. And then they get to pick a song that they're really excited about. And if it still interests them, then they continue to practice it. But the point is that they're practicing it. They're reading notes. They're using their hands. They're doing both hands. They're doing one hand. And so I think that's a beautiful thing that the piano instructor has done with the children. And he wants to play video game songs. So she finds music sheets for these video game songs, and they get him so excited to practice. And I think today was like the longest I've seen him sit there where his sister's like, is he done? Because I need to do it now. Right. So
I love that. Like fighting to use the piano instead of fighting to use the Game Boy, like I used to with my sister back in the day.
Yeah. So I'm not mad at that. So she does stuff like that. So find something that interests them. Okay. So it's not exactly what they're supposed to be practicing, but they're still getting in that practice time. And that's the same thing with the kids in my office. Like they come in and we do strengthening activities and we do range of motion activities and we do things like that. It's not in the traditional sense of like squeezing thing for 10 reps 3 times, like it's let's hang up clothes on the clothesline, and you're squeezing those things, or let's shoot the little squeezing toy that has a ball in it. A little ball in it. So you have to squeeze a little belly to pop the ball out. So let's do 20 of those and let's see if we can knock down the little army man that I set up for them. Like it's stuff like that, or it's practicing dressing skills, that they're limited in doing, but nobody wants to practice putting on their shirt 10 times a day. Like no, or putting on their socks. Like no one wants to do that.
Right.
So what do? Well, we make a challenge out of stuff. Let's put the hair ties over, this. Today was a pool noodle, but let's put the hair ties over the pool noodle. Or, let's squat down and pick up this toy and we're going to toss it into the basket. It's not a ball, but it's a fun squishy toy that probably makes a sound on its way down, or let's climb the ladder to go get these pieces and bring them back to put together a puzzle. So it's just a matter of figuring out what you have in your environment that can elicit the same movements that you're trying to get them to do without making it boring,
which is exactly what you just said about choosing a song that you're excited about to play on the piano instead of just like a Bach Etude number 5, which feels boring. That's the equivalent of squeezing a ball 10 times or putting your shirt on 10 times, because it's like, I don't like this. You're learning the skill, but like, or you could learn the skill by playing do 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 do, like whatever song it is that you're excited about, you're still learning the notes and the coordination, or you're actually having a real world application of
it's about finger placement. And I know like for him, like it's about finger placement. He loathes using his left hand. He does not want to play the left hand. He's like, can I just do everything on the right?
Interesting.
I'm like, no, kiddo, like you really got to practice both. And it's because it slows him down. He has to stop and think more when he has to use both hands. He gets frustrated. And I get it.
Don't we all, kiddo?
I'm like, I get it, kid. And that's why you practice it. But like when he gets it and he can go through it real fast. And he's really good at like hearing it and then repeating it. And then he's like, okay, great, I'm done.
That's a good skill.
But slowing down.
Close.
I'm like, but slowing down, he doesn't want to slow down to do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's him.
I feel like he and I have a lot in common. Sounds exactly like I was playing piano. I felt so lucky, and I was one of those kids who I just fought. I fought piano. And I've at least built up enough skill. I wish I had taken it farther. I took lessons from like maybe 4 or 5 to like 11, 12. And I wish I had done it. I was right at that cusp of like really being good at it. I'm okay. But I broke my left hand. I broke my right arm, and I was forced to do left hand work in the piano. They didn't let me off the hook in lessons. I remember being like, oh, awesome, I won't have to do piano lessons. And my teacher was like, excellent, because I really struggled with my left hand. And she was like, well, we're just going to do left hand songs. And I was like, no. Because I thought I had my free pass out, but it really did help. It helped, and then I wasn't as hesitant to use my left hand. Yeah. I did get out of cursive though. I was 3rd grade. I got out of cursive for a while, but then I had to catch up. So no, I totally relate with that. It's hard to be ambidextrous. It's hard to do 2 things at once.
It is very hard.
2 different things
and
at once.
I think that's the beauty behind like our brain's ability to gather that information, and it truly does make you a more open vessel for knowledge when you're able to cross the brain like that. Like from a scientific perspective, it's crazy how the brain lights up when you're doing two things at once like that.
Yeah.
And how much
They say, I
absorbent
just
you are.
learned the stat, playing an instrument, studies show, and I wish I had something to cite this, but somebody told me recently, and you might be able to verify, that playing an instrument is one of the few things that have been tested that light up the most parts of your brain at once.
Yes.
Just because it uses two hands, you're processing visual information, you're literally reading a different language in a sense.
Auditorily.
And that,
Vestibularly.
yes, and then you're listening, and often there's a physical element if you're breathing or singing or just even playing. There's
the foot
muscle
Then you throw in
memory.
the foot pedal in there. You're talking about you're sitting on a bench, so your back's not even supported, so you have minimal support when you're sitting. So now you're talking about your inner ear vestibular. All these terms, sorry, there's
balance.
Your vestibular mobility.
Yes.
Yeah, all of that is in play. And then you're talking about when you're crossing to play keys on the other side or here, split down the center. Like it's,
and that's just like the
involved.
Logistical part. Then there's the creative part of like, what story are you telling? What emotion are you infusing? What's your phrasing and your dynamics? And so, okay, you're nodding like that's verifiable information.
Yeah, it is.
There you go.
It is.
You go. Everyone pick up an instrument. It's not too late.
It's not actually.
And that's it for our podcast. Have a good day. No,
it's not, because I tried picking up the violin with her. I was like, I'll play with her. But it got too hard balancing everything. So she was like, Mom, you have your violin, but you don't play. And I was like, I know, honey. The plan, I can. I sit down and I can play some strings, but it doesn't sound nearly as beautiful as you, so I'm just going to sit down and cheer you on. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But it isn't ever too late to either get back into it or pick up something new. It'll take you longer as an adult to learn from scratch than it would as a kid, but it's worth it. I mean, my grandma, when she passed when she was 89, and she was a French horn player. She studied French horn in college, and she played her French horn up until like 2 days before she passed away. And by that point, she was struggling with some Alzheimer's and some things like that. But she could play as good as she ever did up until the end, because it just doesn't ever go away. It just never, because again, I think there's like parts of your brain that like retain that stuff. So it keeps you young, as they say.
I think so. I do.
Yeah.
It's good I hear it's really good for people struggling in math.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense. There's a lot of counting, a lot of rhythm.
But apparently if you struggle in math, you pick up an instrument, you will improve your mathematical skills.
Huh. Neurons are crazy.
I'm waiting to see that.
That's
for
wild.
My kid. It's working, but I mean like that. Yeah.
Slow and steady. We'll get there. Well, let's slightly shift gears, talking about fine motor skills and creativity to, we've talked about your family life and your professional life. Let's talk about those final hours of the day after the kids are in bed and you have stitching time. Tell us about cross stitching. I know, right? Let's dig in that dirt. When did you start cross stitching? How long has that been a part of your life?
Stitch People Live since early 2019. But
awesome.
But again, I grew up in a house of creativity with my mother and grandmother my grandmother was a seamstress. She was a town seamstress for her little home place in Mexico. And so then, of course, all her children learned the trade. And then my mother was very good at sewing and repairing, altering, although that wasn't her job. Her job was a dental assistant. But
oh, wow, cool.
But she did
kind of like you. Like there's this like medical science side and then this creative side.
Right?
That's awesome.
And so she would do alterations for us, or she would make stuff for us on her downtime. And so there I would be at her foot, playing with the scraps from whatever pattern she was making that day or whatever. When my grandmother would come over and they would do stuff together, and I would be there in the way, learning to sew. I would be in the way. They would be frustrated with me. Yep. Here's a scraps, go away.
Go play.
Here's some scraps. Here's a needle and thread. Go do your thing over there. And while we're busy over here. So I would watch them and practice. And eventually I picked up how to sew on a sewing machine. And then it kind of grew into, well, I want to learn how to do something else too. And so then my cousins taught me how to do embroidery, like traditional embroidery. So I came back with these towels that you use for, they're not even towels, but they're like napkins, serving napkins for like tortillas.
Oh, cool.
And so, and that's where I learned to do that there, standard embroidery stuff, typical stitches, which wasn't that far from like your running stitch, because I would make my Barbie doll clothes out of mom's scraps. And it's funny because I still have a Barbie dress that I made
Fun.
when I was like 7. That now Alice.
Do they still make? They must still make Barbie clothes patterns.
Pattern.
I was gonna say my mom made us Barbie clothes.
But I used to take the Barbie dresses that, came with the Barbie, and then I'd take my mom's scraps and trace them out inside. Like I watched them do that stuff. You flip the garment inside out, you make your own pattern with paper, and then you transfer the paper to the fabric. And so I did all of that with my Barbie dolls that I would get, because, there wasn't an abundance of money to just go out and buy Barbie clothes, but there was plenty of scrap fabric. So I would do that.
Yeah.
And then that kind of evolved again into the embroidery. And then from there, I came home and wanted, someone was like, do it yourself, cross stitch pattern. And it came with like everything in it, like the ones you pick up, the little packs. And I think I had like a Tweety bird where it said like Home Sweet Home, like Looney Tunes or something like that. Baby Tweety bird, I think. And the whole thing was embroidered, and it was like this 5x7 completely filled in piece. Ask me where it is, I don't know. But I remember that took ages to complete. And I probably was like 12 years old. And that was the last I saw. I think I was done. I probably burnt myself out on that one. And then Stitch People came along on Facebook. And
hooray!
This brings back memories. I totally wouldn't mind doing something. I just need an excuse to do it. So then I'm like, who could I do this for? Because I'm not the type of person to just do something for myself. Like it needs to go to somebody there. I want more purpose than just for myself in that sense. And so I did. I ended up making a portrait for a family that I had known that was going to be moving, and they meant a lot to me and my husband in our early dating marriage years. And so we thought, you know what, let me make this for them. And so I was like, go big or go home, because they had the most perfect family outfit and all the colors, and it was so perfectly stylized. And I was like, I love this. So I did it for them.
So you recreated like a family portrait photo. Awesome.
I was like, well,
cool.
Why reinvent the wheel when it currently exists in perfect format for me? So I did. I tried it out, and I was like, hey, this is really good. So then I did another one for my sister, because her birthday was coming up. And I was like, why not? Let me get a little extra here and see if I can tailor this a little bit more. And so then I made their outfits based on their interests. And I think that's like the one with she's wearing a pirate shirt, like a Pirates of the Caribbean, because she loves her Jack Sparrow. And then like my niece is a huge Harry Potter fan, so I put her in a Harry Potter sweater. And then my nephew likes Pokemon at that time, and it's always stuck with him from like us. Well, obviously he's probably well outgrown that, but for us, he's always the kid, So of course we put him in the shirt. And I gave that to her for her birthday, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is beautiful!" And then her friends were like, "Hey, you consider selling these?" And I'm like, "Oh." Like the second one I did, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You got your mind? And they were like, well, if you ever change your mind. Okay. Well, that sounds ideal, but I would definitely needed to have more practice. Like I wasn't comfortable saying, sure, yeah, right out the gate. Like, let me practice some more and really have confidence in what I'm doing. And so I just started asking people like, hey, can I make a portrait for you? Do you mind? Do you care?
Do you care? Can I give you a free handmade gift?
I just want to practice. Like, hey, I saw you just got married. Do you mind if I make a portrait for you? And they're like, yeah, sure. We don't care. Cool. Thanks. Here you go. And so it was a great excuse to practice what I was doing without the obligation of feeling like someone paid me for this, or like that pressure. There's just that pressure of knowing that there's a certain expectation out of it. And when I did it for these people, it was like, zero expectation, no worry.
That is such good advice.
If they liked it or not.
Like such a great route. Yeah, absolutely. Because it payment ups the stakes, right? Inherently. Yes. Like when somebody's paying you for a service, it's not even, I mean, everybody seems to deal with imposter syndrome of like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough at this, or like, I don't know what I'm doing. But even when you strip that away, It's like, think of anything you'd pay for a service for. If somebody comes over to your house to fix a pipe and that pipe leaks, that's on the person you paid to do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's expectations involved. And when someone commissions something and their input, they're giving you photos, they're giving you input, which then you have to interpret and stitch, which is different than you just making autonomous choices about a photo that you have or something like that. And some people have different processes for that. Like, hey, you're hiring me, just trust my process. Some people really involve, a commission, customer, client, whatever. But yeah, it definitely changes the nature of it. So I think that's really smart that you went about it that way of just practicing a little bit and getting confident in your style and how you like to do it and what you like about it before. So what was that transition like of sort of your testing period to actually saying like, yeah, okay, I'll let you pay me for one of these. What did that look like?
I think it was gradual. It started out with like, let me just make this for you. And then it was like, no, I want to pay you for it. And I'm like, well, you can buy me something to eat. Like, it became more of a bartering situation and then slowly it started to seem like, okay, like I really need to sit down and figure out based on now that I know how long it takes me to do this type of portrait, how much like material it takes or the time, just all of those little bits and pieces came in together with that whole year-long experiment of figuring myself out as far as like what I do with needle and thread and how do I problem solve during certain situations, because I'm like anticipating like what happens if I get this kind of portrait or what happens if I get this kind of request. Can I fulfill that need or do I need like what do I need to do? And then or yes, I can fulfill that need, but what did it take to actually do it? So like with the backgrounds, like people wanted a background in there, and I'm like, okay, what does this look like? Because it looks sure simple in theory, but then it's a matter of
it's just a tree.
Oh gosh,
but it's like hundreds of stitches.
No, right? Or it's like research. It's like, okay, well, they said that they wanted this specific spot, and so what does this specific spot look like? Oh my, I'm going to have to interpret this. I'm going to have to figure out like how to draw it out with just lines because there's no curves. It's all lines.
Right.
So
it's all 90-degree angles.
It all came down to
subdivisions.
It all came down to figuring out what do all those things look like, and then what is justifiable for that type of work. And so then
that's a really smart way to go about it. That it sounds like you sort of tackle each request kind of contextually of like what exactly are they wanting, that you don't necessarily have like a set price for like what you would charge for something. It all just depends on what somebody wants.
And eventually it led to like, okay, well, this percentage of the portrait is covered in a background, for instance. So I just did it in percentages. Like if you want a whole thing covered, like I've done a whole thing covered. This is how much work it took me for that. So then I took that information and then I split it in half. Like, this is what it takes to have a 50% coverage, and then, fourth of it. And so that in case somebody didn't want a full-fledged background, they could have, whatever percentage wise. And then that's how I gauged the pricing for it. And then it came to a point where it was like, you know what, I am okay. My heart feels satisfied that I'm giving you something. My effort, my time, everything I poured into this is justifiable with this price. And I know that you're going to appreciate it on that same level, if not more than what I'm giving it to you for. But I do know that not everything is within everybody's budget. And so that's the hard part about it all. And then like I think about too, like, I also looked at others who stitched similar to myself to see what their prices were, because, like, what are other people charging for their stuff and their time? It's just a
precedent, proven systems.
And my husband guided me through all of this since, he's done paintings and art stuff like that. But he's sold
that's
stuff.
such
So
a
he
nice
had that.
resource.
Yeah, I know.
So he's like advocating for you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. He's the one.
Charge what you're worth.
Yes. He's the one who's like, don't you dare go less than. I'm like, that
Yeah.
is not worth it.
Well,
and I'm like, oh my gosh.
something you mentioned of just what you said just a minute ago about like, what is it worth to you? I think that's a really important question for anyone who might be considering selling a portrait or selling portraits generally, is sitting with, only you know how much you give. Some people, it's like a no-brainer process. It's easy to make decisions. It's really easy, and it might be no sweat. Some people really pour themselves into it and spend a ton of time and focus on every detail. And there's no right or wrong way, but like only you know how much emotional, mental bandwidth that takes, and how much that's worth to you to give. So like, you don't want to create a situation where you're going to be resentful of somebody for only enjoying it, like, oh, thanks for this thing. Maybe it's like 20% enjoyment. But if you met a financial minimum that you're like, look, even if they don't like it all that much, I know I was compensated for what I put into that. Like, there's still a fairness about it. Or on the other hand, if you do cut back financially because you know it's out of someone's budget, but you really care about them and you know they're going to love it, maybe that makes up for what you're discounting in a price. You know what I mean? Like, it's a balance, and only you know what it's worth to you. I think that just that idea of you just don't ever want to be in a situation where you resent anyone or anything, that you're resenting the process that you've built. You're resenting the customers who are underpaying you, but you're the one charging what you're charging. So now you've got this system and it's just a whole bunch of frustration. There's a lot to think about, and it's important to take your time like you did. I think that's really, really commendable.
And it helps to have someone constantly tell you, like, look, it's okay if you don't have sales. It's fine. It just means that they are not the right person to buy your art. Like, it's okay. And I think that's the hardest part, because a lot of times I'm like, I just want to give it away for free. Like, I don't want to. But at the same time, it's like, my husband's like, nah, man, you worked so hard and no one does what you do. So it doesn't matter what stitcher is stitching. No one can create the piece that you did, the way you do it, because you are you. Those are your hands, that's your ability, that is you. So you can't even compare yourself to others who are probably selling a bajillion artworks, because you know what? Great for them. That's their ability. They have their thing. No one does it you. And when the right person is meant to have your work, they're going to come and they're going to ask you for it, and they will compensate you for it because they believe in the value that you're giving them. I'm like, okay, just keep telling me that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. There it is. The wisdom of the ages spoken like a true freelance artist. I mean, honestly, like it's so cool that you have your husband to guide you through it, because I mean, that's the fine art world, it's anybody who, I mean, that's even the freelance musician world, like the number of times back when I was playing more and people, oh, could you come play some background music at this thing? And it's like, I mean, sure, if you want to pay me for that, like it's a profession, it's a vocation. The amount of time it takes for your son to force himself to learn his left hand is what a professional musician has gone through since the age of 7. You know what I mean? Like, people need to be, the scraps that you were sewing into Barbie clothes is informing the fight. I mean, to me, that is just like, oh, that explains a lot, because you do so much with fine details. Like, if for those who haven't watched, please go follow Giselle and check out. You always do such intricate detail in the clothing and the patterns and the hair. So, it's just every single detail. And so to know that you've been making, doll clothes and all that stuff since a very young age. Yeah, like that's what they're paying for, is the expertise of your grandmother that your mother inherited, that you played with as a child, that you then were able to redirect into cross-stitching portraits. Like, that's what they're paying for. And that's
the years of experience.
I mean, it's invaluable, really. So to be asking any payment at all is like, yeah, you're welcome that you can pay for this extraordinary, invaluable, untouchable skill. And like you said, everybody's flavor is different. Even if we're all stitching the same pattern, it's gonna be different.
I love it though. Like, that's my favorite part about all of it, is that not a single one of us is the same. It doesn't matter how, even in level of skill and tactic you are, like, you can easily tell who did what portrait, because you just There's just something about what they put into their work. Like it shines. And I think that's really my most favorite part of it all, because no one can take away from anybody else, if that makes sense. Like there's no
Yes.
ability to say like, oh, well, they're better than me. Like, no, they're
Right. According to what?
they're them. Like,
According to
sorry,
who?
they're
Right.
them. They did what they do, and you do what you do. And no
Right.
matter how evenly matched you believe you are, like you're still so distinct. And I think like that's
Right.
what drew me to it more than anything else, was that
Oh, I
you
love that.
can't take from nobody. Everybody can
You
share. You
can't.
can
Well,
share, but you
even just
can't
the
take.
phrase like being like evenly matched or evenly skilled, like even that's weird language because there is no match. Like we're especially people who do it just for themselves and friends and family, it feels a little more obvious that like, oh, I am who I am. I think people get nervous when they start selling or they open up an Etsy shop, and a lot of people have Etsy shops and a lot of
So
people are doing portraits
intimidating.
and
So intimidating.
and it is. And it's not to invalidate that it is intimidating. I mean, any selling your craft of any kind is a very vulnerable, intimidating thing. But there's no need to compare, like you said. Like you do you at 100%. You do me at 0% because I do me at 100%. And everybody we've interviewed on the Stitch People, Cassie does Cassie to 100%. Emma does Emma to 100%. So we all do our own thing the very best that we are,
Yes.
because we're just us.
And I love,
I don't know, I'm like talking in a circle.
I know, but it's like you just want to like keep driving it home. Like there's no taking. You can't take from somebody. You can't take somebody else's shine. Like it just, and
Right.
I love that. Like I don't know, I can't help it.
Right.
It's all about the
I mean, this
sharing.
like every star reflects the sun, right? Like no star takes more sunshine from other stars to reflect in the sky.
And
like
they're all there, and they're all stars. I love that.
Yeah. And they all reflect the amount that they reflect, because it's what they are. Some reflect a little gold, some reflect a little red, it's whatever. Got a different flavor. Yeah, no, I mean, I just love that. Like you said, I just want to keep talking about it because it's so important. It reminds me of that whole thing. There's like, and I think this is that whole idea that often philosophers or whatever will circle, that like simplicity is the most profound, because sometimes the most profound things sound too simple to be true or sound too simple to be profound. But I remember when I really sat with this thing of like, you are exactly where you need to be because it's where you are. Like, I remember when I first really sat with that for the first time, and it was like, oh, like that makes it, because especially as you get older, and a lot of people who find their way to Stitch People, it's often because they have more time, because they're staying at home with their first kid, or, like a lot of us are in a very similar place in life, or older ladies who are finally retired and have more time again to stitch like they used to when they were young. So it's people going through transitions, and I think it's really easy when you're older and whatever older means to you, whether that's you're feeling a little older at 33 or you're feeling a little older at 65, like, okay, time is passing and we're all going, man, I'm not where I thought I would be. And it's like, no, you're exactly where you need to be because it's where you are. If you were meant to be anywhere different, that's what your life would look like. But it doesn't. So you're just where you need to be. And to just trust that process a little bit, as stupid as that sounds, because it does sound a little stupid in how simple it is, but it isn't. It's reassuring. So I think that goes for your stitch skill, your shop, your anything you're doing with Stitch People. Just trust the process. And it also, there are variables that you don't know about, like maybe somebody who sells a ton of portraits has a sibling who's an influencer and posts about them all the time. Or maybe, like you never know what other external factors influence what you perceive to be someone else's success, you never know. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. And I remember reading this, Barbara Corcoran, she's one of the Shark Tank people. She's got the short blonde hair. She's like a real estate mogul. And she's like one of 10 kids. I think she's from Boston or New Jersey or something East Coast, and was raised with not a lot of money, It's definitely like a classic rags to riches story. And I read a book she wrote, and one of her pieces of advice was flaunt what you've got. And she tells a story of being a waitress, and all the other waitresses were like hot young things, and they'd get all these great tips because they'd like show a little leg or like flirt with the customers, this was like the 70s, whatever. And they could kind of flirt their way to bigger tips. And she was like this tiny, punchy little Irish gal. She wasn't like hot, but she was cute and she was nice. And so she's like, I tied pigtails in my hair. I wore ribbons. She's like, I played that like nice, kind, sweet girl next door vibe. And she's like, my tips went up. She's like, I worked with what I had. When you try to be somebody else, you're never going to succeed. You've got to figure out what makes you you and just sprint to the finish line. Because that's the secret sauce.
It is.
I mean, that's even I'm clearly on a soapbox, and I do apologize, but that's Stitch People in a nutshell. Like, I realized I was getting burnt out from stitching portraits, but other people wanted to learn how to do them. So like, I pivoted. I was like, I'm not going to keep stitching them forever, but I'll teach you how. I knew how to do that. And I had the skills to put the patterns in the books together. And like, so you pivot into what you do have, what you can offer, and what lights you up, and just being honest about that and chasing that is always going to be a better choice for you personally. Like your kids, like, okay, daughter, you want to learn guitar? Let's go for it. You want to learn piano? Let's chase it. What lights you up?
That's
anyway,
the blessing of being
you
in the
clearly
position
tapped
you're
into
in.
something that, yes, exactly. Yes. Whatever position you're in. And that's, I'm sure you see that too. Geez, this is just like the theme of your life, huh? Like with your work, because you work with people who can only do so much sometimes, and that has to be okay.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes it has to be okay, and sometimes we go from trying to educate into adapt. And you know what? Adapting is beautiful. There's never a thing wrong. So we do something different and differently instead of the standard way. We did what we could to get you to that stage in life. But you know what? It wasn't meant to be. And that's okay. Because guess what? There's another route, and it's called adapt. And we're just going to adapt to our situation, and we're going to make it work for us so that you can be as successful as you can be on your own, or as much on your own as you can.
I love that.
That is what it is. And I think that like seeps into all things that, we do here at home or like out in the world with family and friends and on Instagram and social media. Like, that is truly just the thing that I gravitate towards. Like, we'll do what we can. And if we can't, then we'll adapt.
Yeah. Oh man. I love that you mentioned like online stuff too. Small businesses, it's so easy to feel, especially when you're selling online, your primary influence is coming from online. It's so easy to feel like, oh, I need to run the Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter and the Pinterest and the no, you don't.
Sorry, Instagram.
Like, pick your top.
I don't.
Pick your top two. Yeah, like you don't have to. Or I love the accounts. Like, the algorithm's changing all the time. And when Instagram shifted to Reels, I love the accounts that just post like a static photo as a reel. I love it. Where it's like, you know what? Fine. This needs to be a video now, so you get to watch my photo for 5 seconds. Because that's adapting. That is taking the reality of what Instagram is giving you, accepting the reality of doing business online and choosing a social media platform to engage with, and like adapting to the needs in the way that you're capable of doing.
Do what you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Those fancy reels can be very overwhelming.
Yes,
so don't do them.
I'm like,
don't do them.
Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. It's going to be fine.
Don't stress about it. Or even just posting regularly.
No, I don't do that either. I'm sorry.
Don't do it.
I try.
Post what you want when you want.
I try, but
I know. Yeah.
I'm limited by my hours of operation.
Right. And I love that too. You've started making those the needle
the pin cushions.
What are pin cushions? I can never think of that word. It's such a common thing. A pin cushion. You make custom pin cushions. And I remember you mentioned on one of the Sip and Stitches that like you only make a certain number, and when they're gone, they're gone. And then you'll make another batch when you are able.
So,
and then they're gone.
Right. It started out because it was too many at one time. I mean, obviously, I didn't know what was too many. And I was realizing how much it was taking away from other parts. Like, the kids needed me. My husband needed me. So it was like, okay, not only do I have to make these little guys, but to package them takes up a lot lot of time too, because I have a lot of fun with the packaging. And so I had to gauge, like, you know what? I'm going to set the limit for 10. And when the 10 sell out, if the 10 sell out Thursday night, great. Or if the 10, sell out the next day, then fine. And then I restock Fridays at 1:30. I just change the number back to 10 again, and wherever it's at. So if I sold one, well, then I change that 9 to a 10 again. And here we go for another week and see what happens. Like it is what it is. But I mean, I'm not stressing now about like, oh, I got to get these done, because the longest part of it all is either staining the bases, where I have to wait for them to dry before I can stain them again, or two, the adhering them. So like them being glued, they have to stay, 24 hours before the glue can cure, because heaven forbid I, glue it the night before and they send it out the next day. And I'm like, oh snap, my bad, it fell apart. Like, that's not quality. And obviously I knew how long it was going to take for it to set. So I purposefully, make sure that it's the 3 to 5 days, but I do what I can to get it out sooner if I can. But yeah, it had to be no more than 10, because then I lose my mind. I'm like, my poor little hands can't handle it. My arthritic little hands are like dying at the end. And I'm like claw hands. Like, okay, guys, I can't do it more for now. So
T-Rex arms.
My little T-Rex arms.
Which also, once again, speaks to like what you're getting out of it. A lot of people, their crafting, their freelancing, their whatnot is a side hustle, and so it's important to understand: is this what the point is? Is it for a creative outlet? Is it to supplement your income? By how much? And understand that like working for yourself, when it starts to be overwhelming, you're not working for yourself anymore. You're working for the hundreds of orders that you've oversold, and you're now staying up till 3 a.m. trying to catch up on.
Oh, man.
So understanding what you need out of it and just kind of like setting that limit is okay.
It's hard.
It's hard
to say, and it's hard to say like, I need this limit. It's hard, and it's hard to stick to it sometimes, because maybe me in nature, I want to be helpful. I want to keep giving. I want to keep giving. Yeah. I don't want to say no. No one ever wants to say no.
A lot of people are that way.
And so It's like knowing that on this, like on the page itself, it says like, hey, if it's sold out, don't stress. Just come back Friday at 1:30. I promise you they'll be rescheduled. It's fine. It's fine. Like, just know that they're there. It just means that this was as far as I could get this week before, literally reaching my limit. And that was necessary to hear from like my husband saying like, hey, you have to figure out a better balance, because what's happening now isn't working. I'm like, okay, I need to find the okay for us here in the home, that homeostasis that we have here. I can't imbalance that, because then it leaches into other parts. And believe it or not, like how you feel when you're making something definitely makes its way into your work, whether you think so or not. Like, I don't know. If you're having a crummy day, I guarantee you things are going to look crummy when you put your hands on them. Like, it works that way. Or if you're in a happy place and you're in a happy mood and you're feeling positive about something, it translates into all things that you're doing, even like the words you use and your body language and all of that. It just like seeps into whatever you touch. So it's like, he's right. I need to make sure that I don't tarnish what I'm enjoying. And so,
I mean, like that's, there it is. Amen. I mean, what else is there to say? It's totally like, I can't, anecdotally, the more frustrated I am, the more my floss will bunch, without a doubt, every time. And like a lot of people, I think, have that experience of like, oh, I've just got to put it down, or like they'll design and they'll get in that, and then they have to put it down for a day and come back to it. And like, that's why. It's because you sort of get, maybe even a full night's sleep. Maybe you just change your energy and you can come back and literally see it with different eyes and move forward accordingly, because that is so true. So yeah, if you're resenting your customer, if you're resenting the work, if you're resenting the amount of work, it's really important for the work and for the quality of what you're doing to just spend a little time understanding your needs, your limits, your desires, I love that word, homeostasis, to get it just right for you and your fam. Oh man, I could talk about this stuff forever. It's so fun. I love it. It's like, because it's different. It's not like business chat. It's like energy chat. I don't know. There's something, because it's all to do with the creativity. It's all a part of it. It's not quite logistical. I don't know. It's like the spiritual side of having a little small creative business. The energetic.
Sometimes you got to let it out somehow. And I mean, like, what a beautiful way to make something with your hands and then send it out. And so that someone else can enjoy that joy that you've sent from them, made from you. Like your happiness has been put into it and it gets sent out to somebody else. And you hope that when they receive it, they receive literally the happiness that you put into it. And so that's really what I'm like, why we do what we do, isn't it? I mean, that's why we make stuff.
100%.
That's why we make the cookies.
And stitching people together.
That's why I don't do dinner. I don't like to cook. Because it doesn't,
There you go. You give back in other ways.
Here we go. I'll bake cookies.
Somebody else takes care of happy tummies. You take care of happy hearts.
Okay. I like that. Unless it's cookies.
I love it. Perfect. Well, that's the number one thing that we should make anyway. So I think you've got your priorities straight is what I'm saying. Well, that is a lovely note to end on. But before we officially end, I'm going to rapid fire some favorite thing questions at you. Okay. Do you have a favorite floss color you like to work with?
Anything in that green hue column. Any of those.
She's a green lady. Love
those
that.
Minty green colors. I wish I swear I wrote down one time, like, this is my favorite floss color. Can't remember the life of me what color it is because it probably changed to something else that it's around.
Minty green.
All things
good enough for me.
All things minty.
Do you have a favorite activity you do while you stitch? Do you listen to music, podcasts, watch shows? What do you like to do?
Audiobooks.
Ooh, audiobooks. Do you have a favorite genre?
Young adult fantasy.
Okay,
I need not real world stuff.
Fiction.
Don't give me real story stuff. I want some magical, fantastic beast-like thing that got destroyed by some, I don't know, person from a different world. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just take me out of...
Perfect. And then a young, ambitious kid and their cool, young, ambitious friends get together and fight the bad guy.
Yeah, why not?
Love that. I'm all about it. And tell us, do you have a favorite vacation destination you have visited?
Yes.
And then we'll ask you, what is your number one bucket list destination?
My favorite vacation place was London. We went to London with the kids, 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. We did it. Carry on only.
Speaking of ambitious.
I'm like, carry on only. We did it. And we had a blast. Stayed at an Airbnb, took the trains everywhere, got to be the tourists that you dream to be, walking around the different historical sites. Like, it was magical. I had no words for it beyond my daughter still remembers it, asks to go all the time. Like, really, I think she mostly remembers that the bottom of the Airbnb had a Starbucks. And so she remembers we would stop at Starbucks before we went onto the train. And she was like, I want to go stay at the place with Starbucks.
Perfect. Who wouldn't love that?
And my son is upset.
Hot chocolate or hot tea or coffee every morning, whatever your drink is.
And my son is upset because he can't remember the trip because he was asleep for most of it.
Well, now you have to go again.
He's like, we got to go again, Mom. Okay, buddy.
Perfect. We'll we have a lot of UK love in the cross-stitching world. I've been dreaming of, I don't know if we could make a reality, but I'm like, what if we did like a cross-stitch group tour of the UK?
I got to wave to the Queen. That's all I can say.
That would be cool.
Did? we went to Westminster. I'm like, okay, I don't want to say it wrong. I was like, I didn't want to offend anybody. Like, how dare she not know? I'm sorry. Okay, so we were there, and she happened to be there that day. And Prince William and his Duchess were getting into their cars as they were leaving, and we were right there at the gate, and we were like, bye, and they waved bye, and it was like, we saw the Queen. We came to London. We saw the Queen. We win. Yeah.
I know somebody who was waved to the Queen. I feel very cool about that. Yeah. That's very fun. That is so fun.
Is it right?
I love
how
it.
do you not?
That's like really fun.
You go, and we went to Buckingham Palace, and she wasn't there. She wasn't there. The flag wasn't up, and we were like, "That's okay. That's cool. We're still here. Cheese. Here's our pictures. It's great." And then we happened to be there at her other place, and we got to see her, and we were like,
serendipity.
We win. We win.
How fun. Yeah, you won. You won London. You won the prize. There it is. There it is. Queen sighting. Real life. Okay, well, where is next on your bucket list to visit? Other than going back to London.
I'm like,
for your daughter.
We're going back to London. Oh, geez. Honestly, I'm good.
I love that.
Australia, maybe, but I'm scared of the bugs.
Great.
I'm scared of the bugs, so maybe city life. That's only.
Legit.
I've spoken to a few wonderful Aussie folk on Instagram, and they all say they exist, the scary bugs exist, but if we stay in the city, we're okay. So
that's comforting. No spiders the size of my face.
please,
No, thank you. Would rather not. I'm okay to live my life never experiencing that. No, that sounds fun. And you've got there's good snorkeling there. There's all sorts of adventures in Australia.
I agree. I would love to hear something at the Sydney Opera House. I'd be happy.
Awesome.
I'd be happy.
Yeah, there's another great photo op. What an iconic building. Wow. Yeah, with that. I don't know what that's called. Fins? Anyway. Okay, well, last but not least, let's say, favorite treat. I know you mentioned cookies. Would you say that's like your number one treat?
I am a sweet tooth person. So, yeah, anything along the cookie baking line, I won't say no to.
Do you have a favorite flavor? Like the king cookie flavor?
It's just the chocolate chip. You can't go wrong. It's classic.
You can't go wrong. I feel that on a very deep level. I'm a chocolate chip gal.
Gotta be the chocolate
It's perfect. It's the perfect thing.
It is.
I mean, you got to get the ratio right. Or do you like to have more cookie or more chocolate or equal parts?
If I had a choice, equal parts. If I don't have a choice, I'm going to pick the cookie with more cookie than chips because
I'm on the same page.
Not everyone does chocolate chips. Like the quality of that chocolate chip makes or breaks it.
Totally. Not all chocolate chips are created equal. That is absolutely true.
So if I'm going to be eating one,
err on the side of cookie. I love it. Well, Giselle, it's been so fun chatting with you. I feel like we solved all the world's problems today and gave everyone the answers for parenting, for freelance, selling your art. You know, what don't we know that we have now shared with the world? It's no, but truly, it's been such a pleasure. I love everything we chat about today. And clearly, I mean, it's gone a little bit long and I could chat about it forever. So where can people connect with you online? What's the best way?
Instagram is really probably the best place. I tread very carefully over on Facebook. I'm a lurker over there. So I'll pop up every now and then.
But to hang out with you, on Instagram.
On Instagram.
Cool. Well, we'll definitely link to you in our podcast description, in the blog post for your podcast, and in all our mentions of you on the podcast. So everybody give her a follow. And thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute joy.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you.
What did I tell you? Was that not such a great conversation? I'm like, as you could see, I clearly got out of soapbox a couple of times, but it's because I'm very passionate about so much of what we talked about. It is so important to lean into who you are. After we stopped recording, we were joking about, those simple phrases, and Giselle was saying, you do you, boo. And once again, what a profound little thought. You do you. You don't have to do anyone else, and no one else can do what you do. You do you. So hopefully you feel empowered and excited about what you have to bring to the table and leaning into what you do well and owning it. I'm on cloud nine. What a great episode. Thank you so much for listening and for getting to know other cross-stitch people like you. We couldn't do it without you. We have the best community on the internet, and I am so thankful for you. If you haven't yet, please take a minute to like our podcast, subscribe, give us a rating, hopefully a good one. If you don't think it deserves a good one, please let us know. You can go to stitchpeople.com/podcast. Give us your feedback. We're always looking to improve. And please join us for our Stitch People Stitch Along. We're doing a free weekly Stitch Along. It's never too late to join. Rather than little pieces of a bigger pattern, our pattern, so to speak, is like a patchwork quilt where every week we get an individual square motif that members of the Stitch People community like you have designed. So every week has its own full pattern. It's just a little mini pattern. So you can start at any time and hop along. So visit stitchpeople.com/club to join in, and keep an eye on our social media. We've got some events coming up. We've got some new patterns coming out. So keep in touch with us online and don't miss a thing. We really appreciate you, everybody. Thanks so much to the Stitch People team making the magic happen. Thanks to Jonathan Boyle for the music and Brandon Yost for the sound engineering. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and happy stitching. Hey Stitch People, as a way to say thank you for listening to this podcast, we have made a special discount just for you. If you go to stitchpeople.com and order anything, Use the code podcast10 at checkout. That's PODCAST10 at checkout to get 10% off your order as a way to say thanks. We sure appreciate you. Thanks for listening. The Stitch People podcast is a production of Beansky LLC and Stitch People. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved.